We've long known of these shadow creatures. These stories come from all corners of the globe. And in this episode, we hear of shadow creatures and other scary experiences from Rex. Rex shares his first shadow creature experience, and we believe it stands above the other shadow creature stories we've heard because he also shares how this shadow creature has visited him in different parts of his life. We try to unravel if Rex has awakened his abilities, or were these just various coincidences he's experienced his whole life. Enjoy. Of course, most of our listeners are Filipinos, and we always like to see the connection with the people we're talking to. So, can you tell us about your time in the Philippines before we go delve into your experiences?
Oh yes, I forgot I mentioned that. I work for the military actually in Canada, and I used to work as a flight steward. So
Okay.
it was a government aircraft, and essentially I was just in charge of preparing different food and beverages, and just ensure the accommodations are met well for our guests. So we flew into the Philippines several years back. I was only there for maybe 2 nights.
Okay.
But I did go over to what was it? Tal Volcano? Is it Tal
Yes,
Volcano?
Tal Volcano. Yes, Tal Volcano.
Yes. Yeah, I did horseback up the volcano there. I feel like, oh yes, yes. And then we had a, traditional meal. It was, I don't know what kind of fish it was. We had fish. It was a barbecued fish just before taking the boat over across to
Okay.
the volcano. Yeah, it was a nice experience.
So there's this special fish that could only be found in that lake. I think. I hope I'm not wrong. That's why they probably had you eat it because it's native to that lake in Taal.
Ah, okay. Yeah, it had, I remember it had many, many bones. I kept picking them out of my mouth. I
Yeah,
remember that.
that must have been fun.
It was tasty though.
We can start with your actual the start of your experience. You briefly talk about it on your posts on Reddit. I'll post also the links to your posts so they could do a deeper dive. But can you tell us when it started for you? When you noticed was it when you noticed that you could see things and experience things?
My very first experience, and it's unreal that I can remember at this young of an age, but I must have been between the ages of 3 and 4 years old. But I know that because I didn't start school yet. I probably went into kindergarten around 5 years old. So I was still at home full time as a child, right? Do you want me to just get like, do you have time? Can I explain the details around?
We go 3 hours on this thing, so
Oh,
take your
okay,
time.
okay,
Take your time. Take your
okay,
time.
okay. Sounds good. My parents, they were both in the military. My mom at the time, she had to sacrifice her career to follow my father's military career because they weren't as accommodating back then to parents being in the military. So, anyways, my mom sacrificed her career, and then we moved over to a military base in a French province in Canada called Quebec.
Mm-hmm.
We bought in Canada, we call them a duplex. It's just kind of like a big home but split in half. I can remember the house quite well, actually. I can name many different details of what the yard looked like, the street, the parks, everything. I'm surprised
Yes.
I remember this all. But, anyways, when you enter the front door of the house, there were two staircases, one heading upstairs to the family room, and there was a bathroom in the kitchen. And there was another set of stairs going to kind of like a half basement, sub basement level. So when I went downstairs, we had a bathroom directly to the left, and directly to the right, we had my parents' room and then my bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you entered my bedroom, let's just say you're opening the door. Just imagine a typical square bedroom. At the very back, I had my bed. I still remember it. It was a metal frame, painted like cherry red. I had a guardrail, which my parents later removed when I got older. And I had a small window because it was kind of a sub basement level. So the window was raised high up the wall, off the wall, and it was small. It didn't allow a lot of natural light coming in because it was facing the backyard. From the backyard, it was just a big field. I recall one night, I woke up. I don't know what time it was. Well, obviously I didn't because I probably
Yes.
couldn't tell time at that age.
Yes.
um, but I know it was late because it was dark outside and it was the summertime, so sun setting much later. But I know it wasn't so late that well, my parents weren't sleeping because I could hear them upstairs. They were watching a movie. So I had some trouble getting to sleep. I was just on my back in my bed. The lights were off. But I was in my room long enough that my eyes have had adapted to the environment around me. And I remember just, you can't sleep. You look around your room, but I can't get out of bed and do things because my parents will get upset with me.
Yeah.
So I just continued looking around my room, just
Mm-hmm.
gazing around the room, and I remember flipping over to my left side. So now I'm facing the door to my bedroom, and I noticed an unusually dark, if you want to call it like a dark mass. It was very, very dark. It was almost like there was all the other shadows in my room. You could see like just typical shadows against the wall, right, from different figures in the room. But I found it really strange at that time to see an area of my room that was just so dark, so pitch, like void dark, black hole, black dark. But I didn't think too much of it. At the time, your parents try to reassure you shadows are just cast upon,
Yes.
items in your room, and you think it's this, you think it's that. I never ran to my parents crying because I thought there were, monsters under my bed or anything like that. I was pretty calm most of the time. But this one time that I'm staring at this mess, I'm thinking that's weird. But
Mm-hmm.
at my age, I didn't think too much of it, so I just continued gazing around the room, looking up, the ceiling, whatever. And then I gazed back at the dark mass. And then this time when I looked at the mass, it was no longer a black mass, but it was a shadow of a person. Like imagine like a silhouette of a person that you would see against the wall,
Yeah.
but this silhouette was off the wall. It was in the room. It
Yes.
wasn't against any surface. And then that shadow of the humanoid was darker than dark, like very opaque black.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember staring at it and thinking, that looks like a person, but it wasn't moving. It was just standing there. And it didn't have any defining features that I remember. I don't remember seeing a face. I don't remember seeing clothing. I just remember like a dark black silhouette of what seemed like a man, but who really knows, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, as I continued to stare at it, the silhouette would in a fraction of a second disappear and then reappear closer to me. And it would like maybe each disappearing act that it did, it would move maybe one or two steps closer, give or take,
Without you blinking, sorry. Without you blinking, just I mean,
without me blinking.
yeah,
Yeah, just staring
with
at
your
this
eyes, yeah,
thing.
staring at it. Okay.
And it would disappear and then reappear closer. But the limbs were not fluid like human limbs or anything that we recognize and know on this earth. It it would disappear and then in a few milliseconds it would reappear, and its shape may have slightly moved. Maybe the arm is in one position, but still
Yeah.
it was not fluid, and then it would keep disappearing and reappearing almost like as fast as a shutter can
Yes.
close on a camera.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember keep staring at this and thinking like, am I going crazy or like or whatever I thought the equivalent at the time
Mm-hmm.
at that young
Yes.
age. But
Yeah.
I started to say, am I seeing things here? And it got closer and closer and closer until it was like essentially standing by my bedside, like looking right over me. And at that point, I was absolutely paralyzed with fear. I threw the covers over my head. I, threw my face under the pillow.
Mm-hmm.
I remember tucking the sheets and ensuring there wasn't even the smallest crack of light that come in. Well, there's no light, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean. I was just
Yes. Yes.
putting myself tight under the covers. And I remember even closing my eyes, but that didn't do anything. I remember it was almost like it was invading my mind. It
Yes.
was like pushing like these grotesque images in my mind. I remember like two or three heads popping up. I don't remember the exact look of it, but it was so vivid
Yeah.
that it felt like I was seeing something that was actually in front of me, despite the fact that my eyes were closed and I was under the covers. And it was just, I felt like I was a deer surrounded by wolves. I felt like there was no escape.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like this entity wanted or was taking pleasure in knowing that I was scared. And it felt, you know, I don't want to say evil, but it didn't feel like it definitely didn't feel comforting. And it was almost like they had fun doing this. At that point, I was crying, I was terrified, and I don't know how, but I somehow mustered the courage to get out of my bed because I just couldn't get these images out of my mind,
Yes.
and just like I think I closed my eyes to a squint or just almost closed them, and I dashed towards the door, and I was running up the stairs toward the family room and just screaming for my mom and dad, and just screaming and saying, "There's a man in my room! There's a man in my room!" And my parents, they come down and they're trying to reassure me and just saying I had a bad dream.
Mm-hmm.
And they put me back to bed, left the light on. I think they probably said a prayer or something like that. That's the typical thing they usually did when, we were scared of something in
Yes.
the home or whatever. That was the only occurrence at that home around that age that I remember encountering whatever this entity was. But they did show up later in my life, at a later time in my life at two other locations. I had one occurrence in one location when I was roughly 7 or 8 years old, and then afterwards, when I moved into because I moved a lot as a child since my
Yes.
father was in the military. My final home that I moved into and spent most of my childhood growing up in was where I experienced a majority of, I guess you'd call it paranormal activity, unknown uh, events.
Yes.
And at that time, my parents they were separated. They separated about maybe the age I was probably 7. So by the time I moved into that home, my mom met another man. That was the first time this man was to live with us or move in with us into an actual home. It ended up that this individual, unfortunately, was a very negative person. He was always mad. He was always angry. He was always anxious. He was always screaming. It was very, very rare that you would see him in a happy or positive mood. And you felt his energy in the home. It affected the energy in the home. You always felt tense and on guard. Anyways, I'm just kind of painting the background story here.
Yeah. After that incident, you mentioned that you also saw ghosts. At what age did you feel? I mean, that entity from your description, I can't really tell what it is. I mean, based on the people we've talked to, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but just deducing from what you said, I can't say. It could be an evil spirit in that sense that if it's demonic in nature or something else, I don't know. But that's very consistent. It's very consistent with how people describe evil entities. That's the best label I could put on it. But they feed on negative emotions. If you're scared, they like it. If you're angry, they also like it, and they feed off that. And actually, one person said that it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship that the more you're scared, the more they like it, and it feeds your fear also. Does that make sense? It's like you're feeding each other.
Yes, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Again, with that, whether you mentioned your mom's, I'm not sure if they got married, but that man who
No,
entered
no.
the
Yeah.
man who entered the relationship with his negativity, they also feed on that. So apparently, when we have emotions, this came from a person we talked to in Amsterdam. She said that she could see auras, and she could see ghosts and nature spirits also. And she said that when you're angry, it emanates from you. It pulses out. It of course it for her she sees it as colors, and this is what attracts entities. It maybe it good or evil. So that
Interesting.
kind of
Okay.
that yeah. So with regards to that, you mentioned that you also saw ghosts. At what age did you?
So the ghost sighting was also at that final home that I moved
Okay.
to, where my mom's boyfriend at the time had
Yeah.
moved in with us, and that was the first occurrence of any paranormal activity happening in that home. And
Okay.
I think it happened within the first within the first 6 months of moving there.
Okay.
And essentially, what happened one night is, I first of all, I don't know the history of the house.
Yes.
I don't know the age of the house, but anyways, I woke up one night in my room and I tossed over to face the opposite end of the entrance of the door, and so it's just a wall essentially. And I saw if how I remember it, it seemed to be like a woman in a dress,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all white, and it was pretty, from what I remember, fairly bright.
Okay.
And I don't remember any defining feature in the face. It was almost like there was like no face, or
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of blurred or something. And then she was just standing there. And obviously, as a child, I didn't just keep staring. I was frightened, so
Yeah.
I threw myself under the covers and
Yeah.
just hoped that nothing like
Did you
that would
feel
ever happen
anything? Did you
again.
feel anything from that spirit, or
Um,
was there an emotion that came through, if you remember?
I don't rem I just remember feeling fear
Okay.
naturally,
Okay.
but I don't remember if I felt like it was sinister or if it was good. But I don't recall feeling like it was evil.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like I had any kind of invading thoughts when I was under the sheets. I didn't have anything like that at that time. Now, here's the crazy coincidence. Now, I mean, it could be just a coincidence, but the next morning, before I even had a chance to tell my mother what happened, she said to me, "Hey, I recorded a show that I think you're really going to enjoy. It's about ghosts."
Okay.
And I'm like, at that moment, I'm like, well, speaking about that,
Yeah.
and I told her what I saw, right? And
Yeah.
and then, that was the first occurrence, and she would just deflect it, saying, "Oh, it was probably just your great grandmother. It was probably so and so, just checking up on you. Typical stuff that parents would do to reassure their child, right?"
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was the only occurrence of the ghost. But that was far from the last occurrence that happened in that home. Many, many, many things and pretty frightening things happened in that home. But again, I'll let you guide me so I don't go off
Yeah.
track.
Okay. Okay. It's okay. So maybe you can start with those occurrences. When you saw that spirit, you were around 7. So when was the next? Wait, before you go there, you're way past 7, of course. But do you feel that you are? I mean, sensitive. I mean, there must be a reason that you started sharing. I mean, you started sharing about these things pretty recently.
Um, yeah.
What made you? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. So, I know from a very young age, I recall many, many times telling my mother that, um, I would say something along the lines, I don't know, mom. I just feel that when I look at people, like I see somebody, I can just feel if they're good or bad, even if I don't know the person. I remember that throughout my entire childhood, I could just see somebody and instantly know if they're bad news, good news. And I couldn't explain it at the time. And it went through almost all my childhood. And even until now, I still find myself to be very intuitive. I feel like I can almost always read the energy in a situation, or I can feel if there's something upsetting somebody, even if they don't show any clear indication that they're being bothered by something. And I still remember one occurrence in high school. I had a friend that I used to ride on the bus with going home, and he wasn't very open, or not open, but expressive with his emotions. And the bus would drop us off, and then we'd follow the same path down the street to walk towards our homes. We lived near each other, and we're just walking, and I, for some reason, I don't know why I asked it. I said, I'll just make up a name, Jay.
Yeah.
I'll say
Mm.
Jay. Jay, is everything all right? And then he just like he started crying. He said, "No, I got a lot going on." And he said, "How did you know?" He said, "What made you want to ask that? Did somebody say something?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know why I asked. I just feel like something's not right." And he was very like, and then he opened up to me. And I've always felt that growing up, people would often come up to me and be very comfortable sharing their emotions with me, personal emotions with me. And then later in life, in my career, I would hold like side positions doing, conflict resolution and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I always connect with people on a very emotional level.
From the people we've talked to who share the same experiences as you, again, just to tell you, from the people I've talked to, this is very, it's like you're an empath. And you could feel, without them saying anything, you could feel what they're feeling. A good example is one of the sensitives we've talked to says that it helps him with his work also, because if a teammate has, it's her time of the, I mean, it's her time of the month, he could feel it. He knows she's going through something, meaning physically she's having her period. He would know just without without talking to that person. So that's similar to what you were saying. And but what I want to ask you is, do you also feel that you're absorbing these, let's say if they're negative, do you feel that you're absorbing them also? Because some people we've talked to say that they feel the it builds a weight on them. Do you feel that same thing also?
Um, Not at this moment in my life because it has been quite a bit of time that has passed since my last occurrence, which would have been around the age of 17 or so. So, I'm going to say that's at least over a decade ago.
Okay. But when you talk to people, and I mean you do counseling, let's say they're talking about heavy problems or heavy emotions, do you feel that you absorb them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
I have to keep my distance from people that push a lot of heavy emotions. Let's say they're going through something, depression, anxiety, any kind of thing that's going on in life. I can only take it in small doses before I feel absolutely drained. And I've learned that I've had to distance myself from those people because just them spilling their emotions to me, it's almost like I connect in a way that I can feel it, and it just drains me.
Yes.
If that's what you
Yeah.
kind of meant, is that
Yeah.
is that what you meant?
Yeah, that's what my question was. To connect to my other question, what urged you to share these things? I mean, you on your Reddit post, it was I think just this month that you started sharing your experiences. What is there a reason that you started sharing it, or you felt like I had to share this?
Nothing happened recently, actually. I think I was just watching some paranormal TV shows, and I started uh, discussing with my fiance about some of the occurrences that happened when I was younger. I said, "Oh, that reminds me of this. That reminds me of that." And I've never opened up on any social platform about my stories. I've only expressed them to my family and my closest of friends. And I guess a little bit of that is out of fear of, stigma, or people to maybe people will look at you like, okay, is this guy, is he okay? Uh, but when I found these communities online, I said, this might be the best place to share, and maybe at the same time I can find some understanding of what I was going through, and maybe actually see if I can connect with other people who've gone through similar experiences. And it's good to get it off your chest as well, to just let the stories off your chest.
Yes. Some of the people we've talked to, they were very happy because they felt that this is the first time I've talked about this to anyone. Because again, they're either judged by their parents, or I mean they still tell their parents, but people who don't believe, they tend to judge, of course. And yeah, and they especially, are you Catholic or Christian?
Christian, yeah.
Christian. So again, that bears on another aspect of your life that you feel that it's against something. And I'm happy that we get to talk to some Christians here in the Philippines who, not all of them, but we've got to talk to some Christians who are open to it. You mentioned poltergeist. I learned something about poltergeist pretty recently. Did you have experiences with the poltergeist?
Yes, I did. That was at the same final home that I was moving, that man moved in with us in. Yeah, there I had occurrences in that home. There was that one ghost sighting I just told you that was my first occurrence. I had shadow people occurrences there, and for lack of a better term, I would call it poltergeist activity as well. Now, do you want me to just get right into it,
Yeah,
or?
yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yes, go ahead, go ahead.
I'm just trying to think which occurrence to start with. Okay, I'll start with one of my most terrifying moments. Um, Now, when I was in grade 8, I was in junior high school, and our school was running a pilot program where they would let students off every Wednesday at noon. And that was something I look forward to every week because, midweek, mid-school week, I get off at, 3, 4 hours earlier, and I would go home and I would be the only one at home. My brother was in elementary school, so he was still doing a full day, and my mom and her boyfriend were still at work. So they would not be home till, 5:30 or so. So I would get home and, make some pasta. It was almost a routine. I would make some pasta, and then after eating, I would go downstairs into my basement where I had kind of a small rec room as a kid. We had, a desktop computer, I had a television and Nintendo, and a futon down there. Just a small space, anyways, for me and my brother to hang out. So I would often go down there after eating lunch and just play some video games. Now, I always hated going down there. There was something about that basement that always made me feel uncomfortable. Um, well, first of all, it was very dark. We
Yeah.
had like one window that was covered by shrubs, so
Yeah.
you know, sure, but it was just it wasn't because of the darkness that uh, made me feel uneasy, but I always felt like there was somebody there in the room with me, and I would always turn my head into like in the direction I felt like there was somebody like in. I don't explain it. Like I would
Yes,
feel
yes,
that
yes.
there's somebody in one corner, and
Yeah.
I would turn my head, but I would see nothing,
Yeah.
and I would feel like overwhelming feelings of discomfort, and
Mm-hmm.
I would always try to brush them off and just say, you know what, I'm alone. I'm in the basement. It's
Yeah.
probably just natural, my natural imagination creating scenes for itself. So I just continued playing my games to this one occurrence. Now at the time, I had a German Shepherd named Max, and he would lay down near the rec room. There was right beside the rec room. We had a laundry room that was within view. Now, at one point while I was playing my game, I heard an object fall. I don't know what it was, but I heard something fall in the laundry room. So I kind of glance over, and I see my dog, the Max, the German Shepherd. He's growling at the corner of the room. He's got his ears peeled back. His fur is like raised all along the spine,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like in defense mode,
Mm-hmm.
almost like he's ready to attack, but he's not. He's just looking at the wall. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing there. And the next moment, it was almost like a 180-degree turn. He went from being defensive to like basically cowarding away. Like and then he basically did a 180, and he sprinted up the stairs and went to another room in the house.
And left you.
Yeah. And at that moment, yeah, I started to feel very uneasy because that was very strange of my dog to react that way. But I just tried to think logical sense. He probably heard something that I don't hear, whatever. Now it must have been at that point, 5 to 10 minutes have passed. I continued playing my game. Now, just to paint a little bit of a picture here, when I was sitting on my futon and playing my game from the futon, I had a side table to the right side of my futon that we would keep our television remote on. Okay, now this part's going to sound crazy, but this is no word of a lie. This remote controller, this television remote, flipped in the air. And I know
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking, it didn't slide off the table
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
land beside me. It flipped off the air. I remember seeing it like rotate in the air, like at great speed,
Yeah.
and it landed right beside me on the couch. At that point, like, what do you call it? Fight or flight
Yes.
kicked in, my
Yes.
instinct, right? And
Yes.
obviously I couldn't fight because I couldn't see.
Yeah.
So, so the next reaction was flight,
Yeah.
and I remember getting up so fast that I tripped over the controller wire of the
Yes.
Nintendo, and I fell on my stomach,
Ah, yeah.
like flat on my stomach, and it like ripped the entire system out. It got
Yes.
disconnected,
Yes.
and
Yes. Yes.
and I immediately just threw myself back on my feet like you were doing a burpee exercise,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
and just sprinted upstairs. I think I shut my eyes. I just kind of felt my way up the railing, and I just refused to open. I just sprinted all the way up. I opened my backyard door, and I went into the patio, and I did
Okay.
not enter the house until one of my parents came home. So I was literally sitting in the backyard for probably like 4 hours until one of the two, my mom's boyfriend or my mom, came home.
What did you tell them? Why were you outside?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I remember my mom's boyfriend came home first, and he said, "What are you doing out here?" He had a
Yeah.
very thick French accent, and
Yeah.
he said, "What are you doing out here?" And I explained it to him. I told him what happened. He said,
Yeah.
"Oh, come on," he didn't believe in any of that. He just,
Yeah.
"Oh, come on, whatever. Oh, your mom would like to hear this story," and then he would kind of mock me and make jokes, right? Um, and I just continued to stay outside. And then maybe 30 minutes later, my mom walked in. I explained it to her, and uh, she would just kind of. It's weird. It's almost like she wouldn't absorb
What you're saying.
what I was telling.
Yeah.
I mean, and at the time, I was like 14 years old. Like I
Yes.
wasn't a kid anymore.
Yes.
Um, and I told her exactly what happened. And oh, it's just your grandmother, great grandmother playing jokes on you. She's just. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, this is not her. Like,
Yeah.
it's it's not her.
Yeah.
It's definitely not her. And then I think it was 2 or 3 years, or maybe even for the rest of the time I lived in that home, I absolutely refused to go in that basement. I absolutely refused.
So after that incident, you never went down again, unless needed.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The laundry machines were downstairs.
Yeah, I know.
So if I had to do laundry, like, um, I would maybe give my brother a bit of allowance money or something. You go do it, please. I don't want to go down there. Or I think that as some time passed, maybe a few years, I would go down, but only if somebody else would come with me. It didn't
With
matter
you.
who, as long as
Yeah,
somebody else was with
yeah,
me. Because in a sense, I guess it created some sort of false security at the time. Um, but even with people, I still felt overwhelmed. It's just an overwhelming presence, and it was not a comforting one
yeah.
at all.
Given that, I mean, you mentioned your brother sometimes did it for you, but did he have experiences also in that house that he told you?
I've always asked him. I've always asked him, and he always said he doesn't remember anything. However, he was there for one of my other experiences when we were slightly younger. So I was probably maybe 10 at the time. He was 8. My parents would regularly hire babysitters because they would work late sometimes or they would go out for a night. So this one time, my mom and her boyfriend, they went out for a night just to go dancing or whatever, and she had a babysitter watch us into the late hours. Um, she was instructed to put us to bed something like 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m., and we were all just in the living room watching TV together. And out of nowhere, on the one of the living room walls, we heard a deep. It's almost like if you're running your fingers down the chalkboard
Yeah, scraping.
very slowly,
Yeah.
and it was just like a long drag from one part, and then in a fraction of a second after one drag was done, on like the opposite end of the wall, another long drag. And this wasn't
In the opposite
like
end.
this.
Opposite end. Okay.
Well, same wall, but
Yeah.
like opposite end of that wall. So, and it would jump from different spots. And then
Mm-hmm.
this wasn't the noise like rodents were scratching or
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Like this was a loud, like heavy, like clawing noise. And my babysitter at the time, she was so frightened. She said, "What is that?" She's like, "Have you heard this before?" I said, "No, I've never heard it down here before. I heard it in my room, but never down here." She said, "You heard it in your room?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't know what it is."
Yeah.
And she said, "Do you have mice in the house?" "No, we don't have anything like that in the house." She said, "I've never heard anything like that before." And then she got really, really scared. And she opened the side door to our
Uh-huh.
backyard to go
Mm-hmm.
see if there was something on the outside, like scratching.
Yeah.
But our backyard was locked by a large gate. We were in a safe neighborhood. Nobody would have jumped over and done that. And even if they did, the walls were so thick, they would not be been able to produce that noise from the outside of the house because it sounded like it was coming from the inside. Um, so she went outside, she saw nothing, she investigated the yard, and she came back in the living room and she said, "Okay, I'm not putting you guys to bed. You're staying here with me because I am scared right now."
Yeah.
And anyways, she explained what happened to my mom. I can't remember what they said, but anyways, she never returned. She refused to come back.
At least she
Yeah.
stayed. She stayed to
Yeah.
protect you guys.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I remember her holding us like she was scared. She had my brother on her right, me on her left, and she was holding us, and you could see she was absolutely terrified.
I want to ask if you have other poltergeist experiences, because that insight I told you about, which I learned about, I think yesterday, I was listening to another podcast. A trained psychic said poltergeists are sometimes manifestations from very strong latent psychics. So the first story, definitely that doesn't fit the bill. That's probably an entity. But do you have other?
I do. But I'll jump into the other poltergeist activity. So I was in my, I would say preteens, maybe 11, 12 years old. I was probably in grade 6 at the time, maybe going into grade 7. And these occurrences happened after my first sighting of that ghost in my room. And and they happened not too long after, I would say within maybe a year and a half. Is well, I don't want to jump all over the place here, but there were many, many, many occurrences in that home where I saw like the shadow entities. Going back to the poltergeist, and I'll get into that story later. Going back into the poltergeist style activity, there was a period of time where I would go to bed at night, and no word of a lie, my bed would shake and rock left to right, and not like violently, but enough where it was it was like left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, and very gentle. But the mattress was old. I remember this because you could hear the springs like very, very faintly squeaking. And I remember I was laying absolutely still, and I remember thinking, "Am I imagining this?" And then I was laying there. I could still feel my bed rocking. I screamed. I remember screaming to because my mom's boyfriend at the time, every time I brought up an occurrence of a ghost or something, he would mock me and mock me. And then there was a few times where he came into my room and he hid in my closet, and he would wait in there for 20 minutes and then jump out and scare me. And there's a few occasions where he did stuff like that. So I yelled, and whatever. There's no way you guys are know this. I'll just say his name's Michael.
Yeah.
So Mike, I said, Mike, stop it. I thought he was at the edge of my bed playing a prank again.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept screaming, stop it, stop it. I hear my mom running upstairs and said, why are you screaming? I said, well, Mike's shaking my bed and Mike is downstairs with me. There's nobody in your room. I said, he's not hiding in the closet or something? No, look, she opens the closet. It's like, we're downstairs. Like, what's wrong? And I told her, and I said, just having a bad dream or whatever. Now, and this would continue. This bed shaking would continue almost nightly for weeks, maybe even months.
Wow.
And that wasn't the only thing that was happening in my room while the bed was shaking. Sometimes it would swap from one thing to another. So again, the deep scratching along the walls would happen in my room just above my head by the baseboard of the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that would happen would be we had a closet. It was the closet in my room. They slid on a track. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like, yeah, it's just a closet, the door that slides on a track, but it's kind of wobbly. So like if you were to, you can push two fingers against it and it would shake, and you can hear the cheap metal kind of wobbling, right? And I remember too, I would hear a gentle wobbling of the door, like of the closet door along the track. So it switched from the rocking to the track of the closet door shaking to the scratching on the walls. And those were the three main things that I remember. Something else I remember was gentle tugging of my bed sheet as well. I remember that, and I remember pulling, like almost like the bed sheet was being pulled off me, but not like completely being taken off. But I can feel it like just gently sliding, and I remember keep pulling it up.
Okay.
And I would fall back asleep, and then I look, and the blanket is lower again, and I it would feel like somebody was pulling. And again, I would always yell, "Mike, stop it, Mike!"
Yeah.
And the same thing, like, or they either come upstairs or they come out of their room because they were sleeping.
Yeah.
We're sleeping. And I think, I started to silently terrify my mom because she would always deflect it, but I could start to see and feel fear behind her eyes.
Yes.
But she'd play the mother role and just try to comfort me, say a prayer, whatever. But yeah, that went on for a very long time. Within those years, yeah.
I'm not sure if you do it there in Canada, but here, if things like that occur in a house, usually Christians and Catholics do it, that they have it blessed. Did you ever try to do that, or it's not something you do?
When I was growing up, we were Roman Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
and although we had a level of, how do I say, faith among us. It wasn't, we weren't as strong as a family as the typical religious family. We never like went to church or anything like that. At times of distress or whatever, we would say a prayer, whatever. But it was very
Slightly detached.
yeah, exactly. Like, okay, yeah, I believe in God or something, but we don't do much to practice or worship as people often do.
I'm not an expert in these things, but from the stuff I've listened to and from the guests we've had, with regard to that poltergeist occurrence that you felt, one of the psychics said when he was young, a lot of things started to make sense when he was older because he trained in it. He realized that a lot of the things that he experienced when he was younger that he felt were spirits were actually his latent psychic abilities. So I'm just saying you could be a latent psychic, meaning the pulling of the blanket. That doesn't make sense, but the shaking of the bed and the moving of the, was that the drawer, the
The
closet.
closet door
Yeah, the
on the
closet door.
track. Yeah.
So that kind of deducing it from your story, that kind of connects that maybe I'm not sure if it's you or your brother. Yeah, the latent psychic abilities. That could be an explanation for some of these poltergeist experiences. I'm not sure. Again, you would be
Could you explain a little bit more
okay.
what you mean about the latent psychic
Yeah, I
abilities?
was listening to this podcast of this guy who was a psychic. He was a guest also. He was just telling his story that growing up, these poltergeist experiences occurred to him. Shaking things, spoon and forks moving on their own in the kitchen, or clattering on inside the drawers. So he said it it eventually made sense because most of these poltergeist occurrences are because of latent psychic abilities of children. So it's mostly strong psychics, strong psychic children that
Oh, okay.
that don't know they have that ability.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
Okay.
it manifests in that sense. Like
Wow.
it made sense for the shaking bed and the door.
Yeah. I mean, the sheet being tugged, I mean, that could have very well, like, I misinterpreted that, but at the time it felt as if, it was being tugged. But yeah, the shaking of the bed, the closet, and the scratching were the most frequent events that happened.
So I mean, I'm not saying that it's the same thing, but it could explain. I mean,
Right.
you
Okay.
obviously have abilities that are not normal for everyone else. I mean, it's special for you. You have these gifts. So I'm just trying to connect what those things were.
You think you personally think it's a gift, or do you think I was being targeted? You know what I mean? Like, was I a person of interest to be targeted, or I mean, could it be one or the other, or is it usually people?
So we could go into those shadow entities you mentioned.
I'm gonna rewind a little bit,
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
and not too long after my parents separated, and at the time we were living on another military base
Mm-hmm.
in the province of Ontario. Now, my father, well, on military bases, they have what's called like military quarters. So
Mm-hmm.
they're like just they're like homes that are there for military families, and they can rent them out for a much lower rate, just to help out the families that are always constantly moving and etc. So, anyways, my parents separated. My dad had to quickly find a new place to live, so he just took one of these military quarters, or I'm just trying to think of a better name. Military home. Let's call it
Yeah.
military home. And I remember that every second weekend, my brother and I would come to this home, and we'd spend the weekend with my dad, and we'd have a lot of fun. It was always a fun time there. And never, my dad is a great guy. He was always creative and fun with my brother and I, and we always looked forward to it so much, because so there was not any negative energy in that home at all.
Yes. Yeah.
I've never felt anything in there. Now, at the time, let's see, I was in probably grade 2 or grade 3. So what, maybe 8 years old,
Yeah.
something like that. I remember my dad, he's, of course, with the separation, sometimes, you have to get new furniture and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad, he bought a futon, even though I had a bedroom upstairs. It was my first time I saw this. I said, oh my goodness, I thought it was the most amazing thing ever. A couch that turns into a bed.
Yeah.
This is cool. We never had anything like that
Yes.
growing up, and I
Yes.
was only like 8 or 9. So,
Yes. Yes.
I asked my dad. I said, "Can I sleep on it tonight?" He said, "You just want to sleep here alone tonight? You have your bed upstairs." I said, "No, no, no. I want to sleep here tonight." And I remember I was at my. It was just a few days away from Christmas, because I still remember the Christmas tree right next to the futon. We were at my father's place for the holidays. That night, I went to sleep like any other night. And now I'm just gonna pause there for a second. The last occurrence that I experienced of a paranormal nature was the very first story I told you when I was roughly 3 or 4 years old. So time has passed from that like several years have passed,
In a
from
different
that
house.
occurrence,
In
in a
a
different
different.
house. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And I always remembered that occurrence growing up from the years between the first occurrence and the next one I'm about to tell you.
Yeah.
But I never thought too much of it, because I was young. I probably just thought, I probably just imagined something, whatever. But then this night I woke up, And I opened my eyes and I looked at the other end of the living room by the staircase. And there again, I saw the exact same figure I saw when I was 3 years old. It was just a silhouette, opaquely black, not on the wall, standing there by the staircase, not moving, just standing there. And I continued to stare, and immediately it was like a flood of memories that came
Yes.
back to me. And
Yes.
I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I remember seeing this when I was young. Like,
Mhm.
I am I seeing something right now? Like, is this real? Like, and I remember I kept staring at it. I said, okay, I need to know. Like, am I going crazy, or am I actually seeing something? So I just continued to stare, like, very intently. I just stared at it hard, and it would disappear and then reappear closer again in just a few milliseconds. And it was almost like, I don't know how to it's really hard to explain. It was almost like as it disappeared and reappeared, it was almost like, it's not smoky, but it was like, it
It left trails.
it was, if it left a trail, it would be very, very, very short lived. But when it would disappear and reappear, no fluid limbs, just disappear and reappear closer and come closer and come closer, come closer, until it again stood right by the side of the futon where I was sleeping. And at that point, I said, I in my mind, I said, I am not imagining things, and I quickly threw the blanket over my head. And again, as I did when I was 3 or 4, just shoved my face under the pillows. But this time, I didn't have invading thoughts. That
Okay.
I didn't have any of those like invading thoughts, as I mentioned in the first story. So I just kept the sheets covered and eventually passed out, and that was the end of that occurrence.
Were you able to discern if here's another theory we have, some sensitives substantiate this, that depending on your sight, meaning your ability, your gift to see these things, depending on the spectrum you see them in, sometimes ghosts, to sensitive people who haven't developed that sight yet, see ghosts as just shadows. It isn't clear, and we've talked to this girl who can see ghosts as real people. I mean, she sees them as real people, so she can't
Wow.
discern. She can't discern if they're spirits or not. Again, it differs for sensitives. It differs. The spectrum differs in terms of sight. So I'm not sure if you were able to discern if it was the same shape. I mean, you described the limbs of the first instance very vividly, but if you could
Well,
remember this one, or the movement. I mean, the skipping was the same. The skipping
oh
position
yeah,
was the
the
same. Yeah,
movement was
yeah.
absolutely, yeah, that's a good way of putting it, like a skipping, yeah. And um, I could not discern if there was no face. It's just like an opaquely black silhouette of a person. It's really difficult to even say if there's a gender or not,
Yes.
because it's so like neutral looking, if that's the right word for that. And but for some reason I always thought of it as a man, I guess. Uh, I maybe because at the time I would think if I saw a woman, maybe she would have been in a dress or something. So I mean, it looked the same at the time. In my mind, it looked exactly like the same thing I saw when I was younger. Like, it was almost like an identical experience.
But some sensitives say this also, that the first thing that comes to your mind, because when they see entities, sometimes they say it's a female entity, it's a male entity. So probably if that's the first thing that came to your mind,
I
it's
thought it was a
probably, yeah,
man.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you probably have your own theories as to what these shadow people are. I mean, I'm kind of skipping. I'm sure I'm kind of skipping some of your stories, but we could go back to some of them later. But do you have a theory as to what they are?
I my knowledge on the subject growing up was uh, was very limited. The only explanation I had growing up was it's a ghost. That's it.
Okay.
But now that I'm getting involved in publicizing my stories and sharing my experiences with people and connecting with others, I'm starting to see that there's lots of interesting theories out there and a lot of different explanation. It's really hard to really just hone in on one
Yeah.
theory, because I mean, at the end of the day, they're just theories, right?
Yes. Yes.
But
That's true.
so it's I'm not sure what to believe or what to make of it. But I try to keep an open mind, and I've read lots of interesting things, but I'm not entirely sure what I was dealing with.
Okay. Okay, so we could go to your other. My last question, of course, would be going towards the UFO. So, but you could start with your other shadow entity experiences if you want.
Yeah, sure. So this will be the final shadow people experience. So it wasn't just one time now. This is fast forwarding again to the final home I lived in with the emotionally abusive mom's boyfriend that was in the
Mike.
home. Yeah, Mike, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember the very first occurrence. There were many times where I was in my room and I would be looking around the room just like any other time when I was younger, and I would see the figure, standing in my room, solid, not moving. And I remember it started happening so much. There was nothing crazy that happened. I would just see the figure, or I would see it as I'd be around the house and I would have a very strong presence. Like there is somebody there with me. Like when I was coming home early on those Wednesdays when I was in junior high school,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it was so strong. I was the only one at home. It was so strong. It was almost like there was an actual person there. I could just feel them. And then, sometimes I would see from the corner of my eye almost that, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a flicker or
Yeah.
like a passing. And you said, I swear I just saw something, but did I? Did I see something? But I would still have this extremely overwhelming and uncomfortable feeling like there was somebody there with me. And I always had that in that home. I always felt like there was somebody else other than the people that were physically in the home. So there were many times where I'd be sitting on the couch with as a child with my mom and my brother. My mom would catch me staring in the dining room, which was in view from the couch, and she'd say, what are you looking at, Jordan? And she would see that I am irritable, and she keeps seeing me look over and what are you looking at? And I said, I saw something just standing right there, right behind those two chairs. Like, and I would explain it like it was like the shadow silhouette of a person, and it would be there for a second, and then it would not. It would just in the matter of another second, it's not there anymore. But I could still feel a heavy presence, and you can see that it was making my mom really uneasy because at this time of my life and living there for a few years, every I kept coming to my mom saying, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And, at that point, she's not really sure what to do as a mom because she feels like she needs to protect me, but she doesn't understand what's happening. She doesn't know what's going on. And, I'm starting to scare her.
Yes.
So now I remember one other time where my brother and I, we would get up, well, almost every weekend, we would get up really early in the morning, sometimes 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning on a
Mm-hmm.
Saturday morning. Unusual for probably a typical kid
Yeah.
who likes to sleep in, right?
Yeah.
But we loved our video games so
Yeah.
much
Yeah. I
that
know
we
the
would
feeling. I know the feeling.
we had I remember we had a
What
Nintendo
did you
60
play?
we had Nintendo 64, a Super Nintendo, PlayStation 1 at the time, right?
Okay.
And we played everything and anything, honestly. We as long as it was a two-player game, we would
Okay. Yes. Yes.
sit down and just enjoy our time together. But I remember that opening that basement door in the morning, my brother would be just trailing behind me, and I opened the basement door, and then after opening the door, there would be a light switch on the right side of the wall on the staircase heading down. Now I opened the door, and the first few steps would light up from the ambient light coming from the hallway, so you could see very faintly to the bottom of the stairs. But I remember this one occasion, I opened the door and I saw like two of these shadow entities like sprinting up the stairs, but not in a fluid moment. Again, disappearing, reappearing, disappearing, reappearing. But it was
Yes.
like much faster this time.
Okay.
And it was like coming up like
To you.
really fast. And I slammed the door and I said, Alex, don't go down there. I said, don't go down there. I said, I saw something. Please don't go down there. I'm not going down there. And he didn't say anything. He was a pretty quiet kid, but I could tell that he was absorbing what I was saying, and we just ended up going to the main family room and watch TV instead. But yeah, it wasn't that there was any one single crazy experience that
Yes. Yes.
happened with
Yes.
shadow people in that home, but it was like very frequent sightings. And it was all over the home, from the bedroom to the family room to the dining room, but most of the time it was in the basement.
I'd like to ask. We have two sensitive people here right now inside our Zoom call. Ice and Sam. how 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 is it for you? I mean, do you have that same experience sensing them? Is that the same thing, Rex? Is that the same for you, that sometimes you would just feel there's someone there, or there's an entity here by the side, even if you don't see them?
Yeah, exactly. So even when I didn't have an occurrence like or a sighting of any kind of entity, I would say more times I would feel like an overwhelming presence. I don't really know how to explain it. It's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. I can't really explain it. It's just something it's kind of like just a knowing, but mixed with like I don't know how to explain it. Anyways,
They say there's clairsentience. It's like there are different clairs. There's clairvoyance. There's clairaudience. There's clairsentience. There's clairliance. But clairsentience means you're able to feel something by feeling. You know where it is. Something like that. So that could be what you're feeling. I'm just saying that you're probably gifted. You're probably a psychic, a latent psychic from your stories.
wow.
Yeah, the way they describe it is, sorry if I ramble.
No, no, no.
Everyone has it, and just for some people, it's stronger. Sometimes it's actually, from all the stories we've heard, it's sometimes hereditary also. So I'm not sure if your dad's side or mom's side has similar stories.
Well, my father, he does have a few stories. I wouldn't say he's sensitive to those kind of things, but he did have a story when he was a child, where he was spending time at a cottage with his he had like four siblings, so they were all at the cottage, and in the room that he was staying in, he had visual on the living room, and there was an old rocking chair in there, and he remembers waking up one night and everybody was asleep, but the rocking chair, he remembers seeing the rocking chair not moving and then all of a sudden starting to rock. And he woke up his sister and he said, "Hey, look at this. Like this is it just started moving on its own." And she thought he was just making stuff up. Hey, you're pranking me, you're pranking me. And then I think if I remember the story correctly, it's been a while since my father told it to me. He said that eventually his sister then witnessed the rocking chair starting to move, and at that point, she was scared. I don't remember too many details, so I'm just gonna stop there to not fill in anything that's not true. And then the other occurrence was my father was very, very close with his mother, and within the same year that his mother passed away, he um and now there was a few things that happened, but I know the key thing that I remember from this story was he started smelling like a perfume in the home, and it was the perfume that his mom always wore for years and years and years. And his wife doesn't have that perfume, and he knows the perfume, he knows the name because his mom wore it all her life, and he could smell it. He said so strong. He said I could smell it, and he said he started walking around the house. He's looking for where
Yeah,
the
to
source of
find.
the
Yeah,
smell,
yeah, yeah.
and he said so strange. He's like, I can't explain it. Yeah, and there was something else that was happening that was I can't remember the details. I'm gonna have to inquire again, ask him
It's
to
okay.
tell me
It's
the
okay.
stories.
That story smell. It's so common here in the Philippines that I'm
Oh,
sure I'm sure the other guests here would also confirm it. But most of we call it here. I mean, you wouldn't know. Paramdam eh. Parang sorry.
no, no.
uh, I have to translate my thoughts.
No, no,
No,
hey,
no. So
do what you need to do.
when loved ones pass away here in the Philippines, we also have that same belief that they would find a way to show you that I'm okay, or they would make their presence felt. I've heard that story also from, I think, my parents or some uncles and aunts, that when our grandmother passed away, they could smell her perfume, even if it was in their homes, not in the home where the grandma passed away. So it's a very
Well,
common
yeah.
story here in the Philippines to have that experience also.
Yeah, his mother was never living in that home. That's another point I should wanted to make clear. And also now here's the thing that I found out after I moved out of that final home. At 18 or 19, I moved out of that home, and that's when everything stopped. I had no more paranormal occurrences, from what I remember, from 18 beyond. But here's another thing. Now, I started speaking to my mom about my occurrences. I started speaking to her about it about a year or two ago, just saying, hey, remember when this happened? And I went
Yes,
to you
yes.
about this and that. And then she opened up to me and she said, I always knew something was going on there. And a lot of things happened to me in there as well. But I
Okay.
couldn't tell. She said, I couldn't tell you because that was my job as a mom to
Yeah,
protect you. And
yeah.
and if I was scared too, she said that I wouldn't be doing my job and I would be failing as a parent. That's what she said. Now there's one very unfortunately I can't tell you this one story because she asked me not to
Yes, it's okay. It's okay.
share it, but there was one very, very terrifying experience that happened to her and it caused her to sell the home and move out
Okay. After you were gone.
after I was gone. She was home alone. The boyfriend was on a trip. I was moved out of the house. My brother was moved out of the house. Something happened to her. I wish I could tell it, but
No, no, no.
she really
It's
doesn't
okay.
want me to.
Yeah,
So
no, no.
I forgot to mention this. I also recorded an EVP.
Oh yes, yes. You mentioned that. So what we could do is again we could share the link. We could share the link of your the sound. You uploaded it on SoundCloud, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you recorded it in that house.
I think now when I think back, I said that was probably a dumb idea. But and I don't what inspired me to do it at the time because there at the time there were a lot of television shows that were coming on TV and about the paranormal and the unknown and one was focusing on a lot of EVP and recordings of that and I said I said so many things have happened in this home. I wonder if I would catch anything if I followed a tutorial and I tried it at home. And so I tried it. I followed a tutorial. I downloaded the appropriate software. I had the hardware set up. Followed everything step by step. Like from it was an expert tutorial. I guess paranormal investigators that were providing this on their site. Now, when I recorded it, what I did, I was the only one in the home at the time. At that time my dog was passed away that I mentioned earlier, Max, the German Shepherd, and I was the only one there. I wanted to make sure the environment was appropriate for my recording. I turned off all electronics. I closed the windows. It was dead silent in the home. So I started off the recording by asking a simple question, and I just said, "What is your name?" And at that moment, I silently walk out of the room and I silently walk downstairs. I count to about a minute. I silently come back and I quickly stop the recording. I had a good pair of soundproof headphones on and I listened to it and reviewed the recording over and over again. And initially I didn't hear anything and I thought, okay, maybe I didn't capture anything but I said, I'll try a few things. They said in the tutorial, they had certain instructions like, okay, increase the, I think it was the decibel level so that
Yeah.
faint noises would be a bit more audible.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed that at roughly about 23 seconds through the recording, I heard a strange whistling noise, and it was almost like I don't know if you could pick up my whistle
Yeah,
on the,
I could pick it up. Yeah.
like it's almost like like a pitch going up and a pitch going down, and then right after you hear this is what I heard. I heard the words or the word Jack, like it was said like Jack, and then right after you hear like a weird moaning like ugh, and then a few seconds pass by in about the 30 something second range. You hear a very faint muttering. I can't make out the words, but I still refuse to listen to it to this day because it just gives me the shivers. It scares me. It really does. I don't mind sharing it with people,
Yeah.
but I just can't listen to it and
Yeah.
anymore. That is.
So you kind of invited it to communicate with you.
Yeah, exactly. I did, and thankfully I was out of that home a year later. So.
Sam is saying he wants to listen to it. I'll give him the link.
Okay. Just please don't put it on the speaker.
Yeah, I won't put it on here. I won't put it on here. Don't worry.
My recommendation, I would say put a good pair of headphones on,
Okay.
and just a forewarning, because the decibel count was increased. My question is going to sound very loud
Very
in the
loud,
beginning,
yes.
so keep the volume down when you listen to it initially, so you don't blow your eardrums out. And then once I ask the question, then raise the volume and keep an eye for around the 23-second mark. That's where I first noticed
The whistling.
the first
The first sound.
and
Yeah, okay.
and the word afterwards. Yeah.
Let's get the professional assessment.
Not at all, not at all. But I already started feeling something about the house. So I really want to find out what's happening to the house itself because I don't want anyone in that house to be attacked the way that it attacked your mom. So I'm gonna just listen to it.
Okay, sige. Uh, actually, Sam mentioned something. He felt something. Probably a pretty negative entity in that house, and I don't want to say it, but I feel that Mike probably attracted it for some
That,
reason. I don't know.
that's what I believe as well. Yeah.
How your brother didn't open up about anything about experiencing other things in that house?
No, and
Just that instance with you.
I ask him every now and then, and I say, "Hey, did you ever have anything happen?" When the topic comes across, right? And he always denies that he never. And I believe him. I believe that
Yeah,
he hasn't
yeah,
had any
yeah.
experiences, but
That's true. That's true.
I wouldn't call him. I mean, I wouldn't say he's sensitive to those kind of things. I don't feel like because he never had anything happen in any of the homes growing up to him that he can remember. So, oh, you know what? I can tell you one of my mom's earlier experiences, though, if you want me to
Okay.
do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So at the very first home, that's the one where I had my first paranormal occurrence. My mom shared the story with me that happened at that home. Now, she had a lot of plants hanging in the hanging pots. These pots, right? They're not like they weren't against. They weren't near a counter. Uh, they weren't near any piece of furniture where a rodent or anything can jump into them, right? They were mounted to the ceiling, and she would always care for them very well, and also it kind of ran in her family to just kind of keep plants in the home and care for them very well. So she would go water them and tend to them. And one time she came up to the living room and she saw the leaves in one of these plants being shuffled around, and not just one or two leaves, but many of the leaves in this one plant, like somebody was gently brushing their hand through the leaves. And then it went for a bit and she was just watching it, and then it stopped. She went over to check if there was a critter or something in there. Nothing inside at all. So I don't know, make what you will with that, but that's
Yeah.
that's the her experience there.
Actually, her reactions to you when you were telling the story again, we've heard of a couple of stories of from guests who tell us these stories of them telling their parents, and uh, what came to me when how your mom reacted sounded like parents who knew that it was possible. She probably believed you, but she couldn't say again, like what she said, it would scare you, and her role as a parent is not is to keep you make you feel safe, of course.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
there's no doubt. My mom always believed in that, in like paranormal experiences, or to a certain extent she didn't deny it because of things that she's either experienced or family members have. But yeah, like you said, she would always put up that defense to feel like we had that security.
So in her family, there are other stories as well of them seeing things or feeling things.
Yeah, my grandfather, so my mother's father, he had they weren't or ghost, or experiences with ghosts, but he did have an occurrence, and I wish, unfortunately he's not around anymore to share the story, and I wish I recorded or written down these stories. But he told me of occurrences where one night he walked home. He was with a friend. They went their separate ways after seeing a movie at a theater, and it was late at night and he was walking back home. There was a large forest that he would have to pass by on one side of the street before he got to his house. And he told me that one time he saw this big, bright, like blue, misty light emerge from or shining from the forest. And I wish I remembered more of the details, but I remember him telling me this was unlike anything you've ever seen. Like there was nothing that can compare to this. He saw something, and I feel so bad for not recording this and not writing it down. But anyways, the bottom line is he did have some at least two experiences where he believed that he saw a UFO or
Okay.
something along the lines of that.
Do you remember part of it, of what he said after seeing that light? And did he see figures? Did he see, or was it just the bright light in the forest.
I believe he told me that he saw an object as well, but I don't remember the story well
Oh yeah,
enough to.
yes, yes.
But what I'm trying to say, I guess the bottom line is that there are experiences within my family lines.
Yeah.
Um, there was another one where my great grandfather,
Mother
you
side,
know,
still mother side.
mother's side
Yeah.
again, he passed away, and his son, which would be my great uncle,
Yes.
not to confuse it with all the family lineage here,
Yes. It's okay.
he knew his father was dying in the hospital and he was going to pass away any day. There was a moment when he was in his apartment that there was no storm outside happening at all, but all the power in his apartment shut off for about 30 seconds or a minute.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And he said he had this overwhelming feeling at that moment. He knew his father passed. The power came back on, and a minute later, the phone rang and he got the news that his father passed.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it could be coincidence, yes, but it's an interesting, makes for an interesting story.
Yes, that's true. Actually, Sam listened to it already, and Sam, would you want to tell us about it?
All right, so first and foremost, that was a very good morning for me. But yeah, I yeah. So when I was listening to it, so yeah, I heard on the 29th part, 29th second, the jack, and then the moan. Yeah, I heard that as well. I heard it was really really clear, but I it's very soft, but I heard the words I owned.
Oh, wow. I owned. Okay.
Yeah, so I and the feeling that I have whilst I was listening to it was that this entity or the spirit that has been haunting, yeah,
Yeah.
the house previously owned the place, if not the house itself, but the
The
location,
land.
yeah, the
Oh.
land. So I feel like he's very possessive of what he owns, and that I'm sorry to tell you this, but what I felt is that since that you're here, I owned you as well. If that's what I felt in while I was listening to it.
Wow. So you heard pneumonia as well?
I owned.
I
Oh, I
owned.
owned. I owned. Okay, sorry. I thought you heard also pneumonia, but you heard I owned and you heard Jack. Those are the two
Yeah,
things you picked up.
And the moan. He heard the moan also.
Oh, the moan as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. So I wasn't the only one that heard it then. That's good. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. What
That's
seems consistent? We actually just to explain. For Sam, if you want to explain for yourself, it's okay. Rin. Pero sensitives we've talked to, they seem to. There was one sensitive we talked to that he was helping us exercise through Zoom the house of this girl that she felt her children were seeing spirits. So if that would make sense to you, that while you were describing the house and Sam was listening, he could these sometimes the psychic who the exorcist told us images and feelings just come to him in his mind, and he doesn't try to build logic to it. He would just say, "There's a girl by the stairs," and then the girl would say, "Yes, there's a girl. There's a ghost hunting by the stairs also."
wow.
So that's how Sam was able to say what he said, because again these things come to them in bursts and in images and thoughts and feelings. So I'm not sure if you feel that sometimes feel that way also with what you said, that you could empathize with people. Let's say with that friend you talked to, you asked him how he was. Did words
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how does it come to you?
It's hard to explain because it feels natural to me. Like I don't feel like I have any kind of extrasensory perception, but what I do feel, I do feel people's feelings without them openly showing any kind of sign. And I do feel like I connect with people very deeply on an emotional level. I, I'm just trying to think of how I would
Wait, yeah.
explain how.
Sam, would you be able to help us with that? Because Sam, I told him about your nafe-feel mo yung regla before. I
Oh
mean,
my god. Okay.
how does it come to you? Maybe.
To be honest, just like what Rex is saying, is that we don't really know where it's coming from. It is just that specifically when you're emotionally attached to a person, may it be a friend, a work colleague, or especially family members, you have an initiate feeling of what they are going through. It's just that the more that you are connected to them and the more that you know the person, you already know what. Like for example, the PMSing, I it's just that I know that the stress levels are higher. The pain in the how do you
Groin
call
area.
that, the groin area is unbearable. So I already, like, I feel like, okay, this person has that, but not the other one, because the other one is giving me other feelings rather than the PMS. So it does depend on your emotional
So
connection
is
to
that
a
the same for
person.
you? Like,
Right. And well, yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely with family members and friends, I feel like I can read them extremely well. And that might just be me recognizing patterns in them. But here's the thing I noticed a lot when growing up is people that I've never met or people that just walk past me. I remember feeling it much stronger growing up. I could just look at them and just know if they were bad news or good news or what kind of person they were. I can't really explain. It's not like I knew their life or their life story. But I can feel emotionally what kind of person they were. Um, and
when you say bad news, do you see images of them doing anything, or it's just
no, no, I
gut
don't see
feeling?
any
It's just, yeah,
images.
just gut feeling. Yeah.
It's just a gut feeling. I do feel that I have a very, very strong um sense of intuition, and I've always felt that way my entire life. And thankfully, because of that, it probably helped me out in a lot of in a lot of different scenarios to prevent myself from uh, getting myself into danger or something like that. I've always felt a very strong sense of intuition, but it's just something that absolutely feels natural to me. I can't really explain it in words because it just feels like part of who I am and who I've always been. But when I explain it to people, I say, "Hey, do you ever feel this way or that way?" They look at me puzzled, and I say, "Wait, you don't feel this?" Like, and that's where I start to wonder, like, am I just making this up in my head that I think I know what I feel? But the thing is, like, I sometimes can resonate with people really well in my workplace, and I can feel if they're going through something. I can even if I don't know them that well, I can feel if they're going through something in their life or something's bothering them. Um, it's just something it's just almost like a knowing. It's just like it's a
Yes.
feeling.
Yes.
I think that I believe that since that you have been, how do you call it, in contact with the paranormal while you were a kid, it just give your intuition a bigger boost
Boost. Yes.
than what the other people are doing. Like, I'm pretty sure, regardless of if they say that they don't believe in the paranormal or anything, I'm pretty sure that their intuition, had guided them as well. But they don't, how do you call, they don't look at it as a paranormal thing, but
Yes.
more on just a plain intuition and gut feel. But that actually is your psychic ability
Ability.
kicking
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
So it appears actually from all the sensitives we've also talked to, and Sam included, intuition really plays into it. You just feel that, oh, it's just gut feel. But for some people like you, it's more. I mean, for us, it's like, I feel like something is bad with this person, but for you, it's a more palpable experience, of course.
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, like I was saying that when I spend time with people that are too emotionally draining,
Hmm.
it impacts me a lot.
Hmm.
And I need to step away from those people. If like if they're
Going through something, yeah.
going through trauma or some sort of mental health issue, it becomes very, very overwhelming for me. Yeah, sometimes I can isolate myself from people that are heavily going through some. Um, I definitely do distance myself from people that are heavily going through something in their life, and if they keep um, venting it to me,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it could be emotionally draining for anybody, but I feel like it like really fatigues me a lot. But I mean, are you guys saying that you think that I'm more sensitive to these kind of things, or you think this is just a normal?
No, no.
Um,
Well, for me, Sam, would you want to?
Yeah, I think that you are sensitive. you are more on like the, how do you call that? I heard you say it again a while
Empath?
ago. Yeah, I'm
Empathic.
clear sentient.
Clear
Am I correct?
sentience. Clear
Yeah.
sentience.
So which
Okay.
means that, yeah, which means that you just are more, because right now that's what I am right now. I am, because before I was a full blown
Yes.
clear everything. I'm
he,
clear
he
everything.
could see, he could smell,
Wow.
he could see spirits, he could see
I could
elementals,
literally talk to
everything. He
them
could talk to
at
them. Yeah.
yeah, verbally and stuff like that.
Wow. And these abilities, they just eventually subsided, or
Due to stress and anxiety, while I started working in a busy kind of workplace, so I kind of put that aside, and then I had to literally, because I had a very bad experience as well with one of our reading, and I think that my subconscious literally said, okay, slow down, you ho. Sorry, slow
beep.
down. Yeah, slow down because this might actually kill you. But slowly, I lost almost. I lost everything for, like I was telling the whole group the last time, is that I never had, for almost 10 years. I didn't dream at all. Like for almost 10 years, I haven't had a dream. It has only been recently that I started dreaming again and started feeling again and started to practice again.
And feeling, oh yeah, feeling also.
Yeah. Yeah. So now I started to feel again. I'm starting to see things as well. So that's really good. I think what you are right now is clear sentient, and as well an empath, which actually I don't know if Nick already made mention this a while ago, but I actually, when I was um, being an empath, I kind of got that working on for me for while I was working, because I was like, oh, my manager is gonna give me a bigger bonus. I know what to say to,
He was able
to
to leverage things.
Yes, yes, yes. That's a great point. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but
Go on.
I'll,
yeah. But does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to you, that you can
yes,
actually leverage the feeling of, okay, I know what to say to my manager, so she
yes.
can give me a bigger bonus, right?
Yes, that's absolutely it. That is a great way to explain it. That is a feeling that I have with people. I feel like I can sense who they are, and I can feel how I need to talk to them in a certain tone, in the words that I use to connect with them, to be able to open up with that person. I feel like if I approach them this way, it's not going to work, but I know which way to approach every single person. It's just something I know.
Yes, so that's one thing that you and I have in common. But yeah, so I think that the only thing hinders you is that your logic side is not allowing you to continually or fully embrace your abilities.
Okay. I think a part of it too is maybe my previous fear is, I feel like maybe my, like, all the events that happened, in a sense, maybe my mind is trying to like purposely shut part of it off, if that makes sense. I kind of feel like, in the back of my mind, I feel like if I really really wanted to bring upon certain experiences or be as sensitive as I was before, I feel like in my mind I could allow that, but I feel part of me is too scared to do that,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
it's so funny. Yeah, it actually, it's so funny because I actually have and this is something that I could share as well, because I actually, yesterday, while I was basking in the city, I was in the city basking in the blood moon. I was there was this guy who was sitting right next to me. I don't know the person. And then he just opened up to me and said that we started talking about supernatural, which is of course clearly, but he said that I only feel them, but I don't see them. So for me to feel, so for example, if his story is that if I if my friend who has a third eye as well can see it, I have to literally turn my back from where he's looking at, so I could feel, because his feelings starts at the back of his neck. So that's the only time that he feels it. So I feel like you are something like that. You don't literally see anything, but you start feeling things, and that's when you understand, or you realize, okay, there's an entity here or something.
Actually, it's good that you brought that up because I remembered another story my mom passed on to me. If you guys still have time.
Yeah, we like I said, we can go for 3 plus hours.
No, I
Since I'm
Yes,
here,
since he's here,
yes.
yeah,
yes.
I'm really having a good time here. I'm enjoying this. So thanks, guys.
No
Um,
worries.
so this is not me remembering this, right? Because I'm a baby. But my mom, she told me the story about how my uncle, he bought a I try to remember the name when you have it above the crib, and it
Mobile,
can
the
yes, that's
mobile,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, here you are helping me with my English, eh?
yeah.
Perfect.
I couldn't say
Mobile,
it in
yes.
French, but yeah.
Yeah, my uncle, he bought one of those mobile, whatever.
Well, mobile.
Anyways,
Okay, mobile. Yeah.
mobiles, yeah. And it, I think they were, I don't know what it was. Anyways, it was just mobile, and it was above my crib. And my mom said that when the moment that she brought that into the house, she had a bad feeling about it, but she didn't want to be rude to my uncle, so she just hung it above my crib. So she said, as soon as I hung that thing, she said, you started acting strange. And she said that your eyes would wander all over the place, like I was following something, like I was looking at something and trailing, and she would wave her hands in my face, and it would not even phase me. I just kept looking and looking and looking, and it started to scare her. And as soon as she removed it and got rid of it, I stopped. And another thing too is when I was also a baby, toddler, whatever, my mother, she went to me and my mother, we went to spent a lot of time at my grandmother's place. And one thing that my mom and my grandmother always said was, I was always staring off into space. Always. She said every time you were sitting at your high table or you were somewhere, she said you would just zone out and you would just look. And she said, I don't know what you were looking at. You were just looking in the sky and just looking around at everything. She's like, you were so distracted. You're so like, she's like, it could bang a pot or wave my hands in front of you, and you would not even, it would not even phase you. So maybe that's an early sign of something. I don't know.
Yes, yes. Uh, Actually, the mobile. We've interviewed this. She's not sensitive, but she's a interior designer, and she would tell us that sometimes I'm not sure if that mobile was brand new or if it was a second-hand mobile.
I
But
think it was secondhand. Yeah.
okay, so second-hand objects, they retain uh, sometimes spirits or people are attached to it. So if if it came from someone who passed away, or if it came from I'm not sure if he just bought it secondhand, but again, things can retain spirits. Things can retain entities. Yeah.
The mobile retained a memory of a woman uh, who lost her baby.
You were able to pick that up right now?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Ooh,
She's
I got shivers.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, that's what I felt. That's what I felt. So yeah,
Mm-mm.
there.
So there. So it's more interactive here. You tell a story, and that's the thing I enjoy the most.
That
But yeah.
common that happens to us a lot of time. But yeah, that's what I felt. But mostly like I think what that's what Nick was saying, that a lot of secondhand items actually they don't really attach they don't really attach themselves, or the spirit doesn't really attach themselves to the object, but more so, more often than not, they are just memories. So that's probably the reason why um, you were not looking at the mobile itself, but more so at the person at the back of the mobile. And this woman, I felt like she's confused as well, because clearly you're using her mobile, but why are you not when you were in the kitchen, you were not looking to looking at your mom, but you were looking at her actually, because she's as well as confused as you. She was like, okay, if you're my baby, then why is this other woman feeding you?
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that woman passed away already, Sam.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
But just the woman, not the baby. Just the woman passed away?
The woman already passed away. Yeah, this was a long time ago. I feel like she was wearing like wait, hold on, a frilly little frilly dress. It has lace on it. It was hold on, 890, sorry, not 90s, 70s kind of dress. Like it has pleats on it on her sleeves. She has frilly laces on her sleeve as well. That's what I'm picking up. I don't know.
I mean, that's possible. I was born in 89, so 1989. So,
70s. I feel that the woman was 70s.
I mean, if it's secondhand, that it can. You're saying she was in her 70s or 1970s that you
And
that
1970s.
okay. So if it was secondhand, I guess that's very like the 1989 from the 70s. It's not impossible, right?
Mm-mm.
You
Yeah,
know,
it's not.
to
It's not.
Or you could ask your uncle where if he's still here. You could ask him
he
where
is
he
still
got it.
alive. Yeah, I
Yeah, you
should.
could
I
ask him
should.
where he
Yeah.
got it, just to verify, just to check. Again, what we learned, Sam would also attest to this is, even though yes, we believe in these things, you should still. I don't want to question. Of course, I ask people to come in and tell their stories, but for you, you can still verify. You can still check. I mean, you can still be a skeptic about some stuff, even if you experience these things. So it's good that you check, verify first, also.
Yeah. You know what? I think I'm far from a skeptic.
Okay.
I really am. I don't have explanations for a lot of the things
Yeah.
that happened, but I do believe that they happened, and and they were so impactful to me that they were essentially burned in my memory. And for me to remember a lot of the details, I figure that sometimes these days I think to myself, did that really?
Yeah.
Because so many years have passed.
Yes.
Did that
Yes.
really
Yes.
happen? But
Yes.
but I'm like, why do I remember all of these events with such great detail? And so obviously at the time it was very, very impactful to me. It's weird because the thing is like, and this is another thing about the empath is um just talking to you guys, I can feel that you're good people. You know what I mean? I don't feel uneasy speaking to you. I feel very comfortable, even though we've never spoken before. But um,
But through
I
chat,
mean that
were you able to surmise that or not?
I didn't really focus on it.
Just be careful. Just be careful. Yeah. And also for those shadow people, supposedly from Maria, who we talked to, who was a light worker, she said that if you have that powerful ability, and if that those evil entities or extraterrestrials know that you have that, they will target you. She's been targeted because she's active. She's been active about it.
But why do people get targeted?
Uh, because you part of her intention is to disseminate the information. It's a bit harder to digest, but I'm not sure. Did you feel anything today? Yesterday, May 26th.
Sorry, yesterday? Did I feel
Yesterday.
anything different?
Yes, yes.
I was tired just because I didn't sleep well,
Okay.
but that was mainly
Okay.
because the dogs woke me up.
Again, this is a deep dive. This will segue into your other stories about UFOs. But from what Maria told us is at the start of this year, we noted the exorcist actually told us that there are so if you could explain it as frequencies. So spirits are on a different frequency. We are on a different frequency. Light beings or higher entities are on a different frequency. And for some reason this year, the frequencies are mixing. Yeah, the exorcist couldn't explain that. I'm not sure if you experienced it also this year, that you were seeing more things or experiencing more things.
No, I haven't had an experience anything notable or uh I don't have anything since I left that home that I can remember. The only thing that's really stuck with me is my intuition and um emotional connections to people. That would be the only thing that I can think of. Um Now Since we're kind of on the topic, there's something else I didn't mention in the chat that I feel like maybe we can just debunk or find out, what I was dealing with at this time. Okay. Um, Now, when I was in my teenage years, my young teens, I joined I don't know if you have it in the Philippines, Air Cadets. So it's
Uh,
like in your teenage years you can join, like it's not the military, but it's for teenagers, and it's for them to get exposure to, for example, as Air Cadets, it's kind of like the Air Force, but you may learn about, you wear a uniform. You don't go out, firing a gun or anything like that, but they you do drill, and they teach you about airplanes, and then you know what I'm talking do you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
we, ha-
about?
we we have that in school. It's called ROTC. So
Oh, okay.
it's not focused on Air Force or Navy, but you have the basic training. You have your do drills. Yeah, similar to what you were saying. So yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
exactly. Yeah. So in Canada, we have one for Army, Navy, and Air Force. So
Okay.
between the age of 12 and 18, you can join. You don't
Okay.
have to go
It's
into
not
the
forced.
military
It's not
after.
forced. It's not
No,
forced
it's
for
just
everyone. Okay.
it's supposed to be it's voluntary. It's supposed to be a
Okay.
mixture of discipline and fun.
Yes.
Um, Anyways, I remember one time, and this is in the middle of me experiencing a lot of different things at my home. I was standing at attention in my section, and of course you're not supposed to move at all. If you're familiar with that, you probably
Yes.
did some
Yes.
drill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just you stand at attention, and just you're not
Stand there.
supposed
Yeah.
to.
In the heat.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But this time we were doing drill inside, like a gymnasium, because it was the winter time, and it gets pretty cold here in winter
Yeah.
in Canada.
Yes.
and uh and I remember, and I was just standing at attention for a long period of time, and the only thing I can do is move my eyes, right? You can't move your head
Yeah.
or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I remember watching people like march around the gymnasium, and then out of nowhere, I, I this may sound weird to you, but out of nowhere, I swear that I could all of a sudden just see auras around people. But I wasn't seeing color. I was just seeing like a transparent, um, almost a transparent soft lining around people, um, as they were moving. And it was kind of like it was following the people. Now, I don't know if it was just a trick of the eye, or if I was actually seeing something legitimate. I like to believe that, I was seeing like some form of aura, but I always hear people saying they see them in colors. So that's what kind of makes me think, okay, is it just a trick of an eye? And that wasn't the only occurrence. There were a few other times where I would be talking to somebody, and then I see this like transparent lining around their body, maybe just a few inches separated by their body, and that lining would follow. But it's and I feel like I could probably still do it if I concentrate. Um, but again, from fear and stuff that I've developed in the past from my experiences, I think I purposely hold off. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
The girl we talked to, Jamie, she's in Amsterdam. She has that same thing, but hers is probably stronger. She could see colors. She knows what the person is feeling. So it really emanates. So probably for you, the way I see it is you haven't fully opened that window, that your third eye. They say it's a third eye, and you're just seeing traces of it, meaning you haven't opened the full spectrum. So you're seeing, and again, you said that you purposefully disregard it, right?
Well, I mean, nowadays, yes. Back then, as a teenager, I was more confused, but excited, kind of like, wow, I read about this, but am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? Like, it was just, I didn't by any means feel scared by it, but I was just like, um, I remember feeling it was a mixture of surprised and like disbelief, that like, wow, like what am I seeing right now? Like, am I just tired, but the thing is, it wasn't only like that one time on the gymnasium floor. It started to happen a few other times through my teenage years as
Yeah.
well.
So there's no
So
color, just like a lining around the person.
yeah, it would be just a transparent, but yeah, it would be absolutely transparent. But for some reason, it's like I can see, even though the lining is transparent, I can still see a very soft line following the entire contour of the body. Yeah, so it would just be like a transparent lining around the body and very soft edges. But yeah, I don't ever recall seeing any color.
So as of recently, you haven't had that again.
No, and
Just that time, just time there.
no, I haven't had that experience that I recall anywhere past the time I left my home. But I also recall that after that first occurrence, that if I were to try and concentrate, not like concentrate like I'm forcing blood pressure
Yes,
into my
yes,
head, but
yes.
um,
Like
just
meditate.
focus.
Yeah, focus on it.
Oh yeah, meditation or focus. And sometimes if I feel like I can trigger that. I can trigger something to see that, but I feel like part of my mind is blocking a lot of that stuff out of just fear.
Like what Sam mentioned, your logic. You're trying to put logic into things that cannot be explained yet.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah,
I think that's I think that is your, how do you call that,
coping mechanism.
your empath
Oh,
kicking in.
okay,
What
okay.
I think that you are looking at is not is because being an empath, you get to as well read people's aura. So I think that's just kicking in. That's the reason. I think that the more that you are surrounded by these people, it just get in, and that's when you started seeing outlines. So if it was further developed, it would have eventually become aura reading for you, if that would have been, if it was developed.
And it was during a time in my teenage years where I had the most occurrences in my life, unexplained occurrences and frightening events, and then it was also at a time where I tried to do research and understand what I was going through. So it was on my mind a lot. So maybe I had a level of interest, so I feel like my mind was more open then. Um, but I think as like things started to get more frightening, as more frightening things like the poltergeist stuff, I think eventually I tried to phase it out as much as possible, just so I can get through my days and just live my life, if that makes sense.
Would you like to segue to the you mentioned I think you mentioned the UFO? Was this in the Air Force?
No, no,
Okay,
it
go,
wasn't
go
in
ahead.
it wasn't in the Air Force. No.
Go ahead.
So this is one of my weirdest stories, and I even in the right communities, I still feel I
Same
feel
here.
weird saying it.
Same here. Same here.
Okay, yeah, it's hard for me to tell the story to anybody because it just feels really strange to say it. But anyways, I'll go ahead. Um, so in when I was living on a military base in Ontario, and I was roughly in grade 1 or 2, um, I woke up one day in my bedroom in that house, and we were living in a military house, and this is just before my parents separated, probably a year before. And I woke up at some point in the night, and I don't know why. It could have been for any reason, but I remember seeing a very bright light shining through my window. But I had a forest in my backyard. It was a backyard and then forest right after. I remember going up to the window. I was just being curious, what's causing all that light? So I went up to the window and I looked outside. And I remember seeing like 2 or 3. I can't remember the exact number. 2 or 3, like, I don't even know what you would call it. Humanoids. They weren't human though. They were not human. And whatever it was, and as I was looking, one of them turned their head and stared right at me in the window, and I almost fell down on my butt on the floor. And at that time, I was almost trembling in fear. And I managed to get just enough strength to crawl into bed, but I didn't have the strength to scream because I was so scared. Um, and I woke up in the morning and I told my parents what I saw, but and I told them it wasn't people. Like at the time, I just I don't know what I said, but I know what I saw was very strange. But um anyways, my parents were thinking at the time, oh, there's teenagers getting up to no good in our backyard, like we should maybe install a camera or something, which they never did. But um that yeah, that's one of the stories I feel most uncomfortable telling, just because of the strangeness of it. Um, like, do I want to say aliens, or extraterrestrials? It sounds crazy to say. It kind of feels weird to say, and I think that's part of me scared to be judged or have prejudice. But so that was one story, and the second one was roughly 2005 or 2006. My dad got remarried to another woman. They had a very simple ceremony at home.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Can I find out where that was again? The first experience. Where in Canada? Sorry.
Oh, okay. In Canada, it's a military base called.
Oh, military base. Okay.
Yeah. Do you want the name of the base?
Is it okay to say that?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a public base. Yeah, anybody
Okay.
can find it. Yeah, it's called Canadian Forces Base Borden.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about an. If you're familiar with the city of Toronto, it's about. I believe it's south of Toronto by maybe an hour or so. I think so. I have to check the map again, but I think that's. Yeah, so going to the second story and fast forwarding many years. At this point, I was probably 17 or 18. I would say roughly around 17. It was the year 2005 or 2006, in the current town that I'm living in right now, in Quebec, the province of Quebec. So my dad, he got remarried to another woman. They had a simple ceremony at home, and then my parents, of course, they were obviously divorced, but my mom was living in the same town at this point, and same with my father. They were just a short 10-minute drive away. In that evening, but before the sun set, it was the summertime. My dad was driving me home back to my mom's house after they had their ceremony and food and all that good stuff. And my dad, he had 26 years of experience in the military. He's been deployed. He's a very logical guy. He's very well spoken and intelligent, and he doesn't make a big fuss about a lot of things. He's pretty humble. But my dad is driving, and then he just bursts into like this moment of like excitement and like what's the word I'm looking for? It's amazement. And says, look, look, look. And we're on the highway. And he pulls off on the shoulder of the highway, and I've never seen him get out of his car so fast. And he's get out, get out, get out. We get out of the car, and I'm looking up in the sky, and there's two UFOs in the sky, and they're flying in different directions, like really fast, like left, right, up, down, and they're swirling around, and then they disappeared for a second, then reappeared and flying. Like they were so fast and so erratic. There was no way that it was an airplane of any sort. And my dad, he was stunned because he spent a lot of time in the military. He knows what he saw was not anything he's ever seen. It being in the military, right? And even me, I knew what I was looking at, was not something I've ever seen. And I remember a feeling of it was a mixture of like fear, excitement, and like questioning like the universe. Like
Yes.
it was just like,
What's this?
like, am I seeing, like, I remember thinking to myself, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing right now? This is
Yes.
freaking UFO. This is a UFO. And anyways, I would think we watched them for about 10 seconds or so, and then they just both at the same time vanished. Boom. And that's it. And we weren't the only ones. There were other people pulling off on the shoulder of the highway as well, watching this. It was a big public highway. So, and the sun hasn't set yet. So there was still quite a few people traveling on that road.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Were you able to discern the shape, or they were too far away for that?
Yeah, I would say it's like the very typical sighting that you would see. They were discs, but they were very bright. But they were too far to really make clear detail, and they were moving so fast that honestly, I can give you a better description on how they moved than how they looked. And how they moved was very like nothing I've seen on this earth before. There's no way that I could have mistaken it for anything else. There's nothing I can compare it to. Even in my time, I'm in the military as well. I've never seen anything move in the sky like that before.
They're saying they could stop midway and shift direction immediately. I'm not
On
sure
the dime. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would like stop on a dime and then like shift in the other direction at like very fast speeds, and then just from one angle and then just swing to the other side. And I mean, I don't know what they were doing in the sky. It just looked like they're zipping all around. But yeah, and that was my story and my experience. First time seeing anything like that in the sky, and was really amazing. And I actually looked up in the archives online to see if there were previous sightings in this region, and it seems to be quite a few.
Yeah. I also seen in Toronto and Quebec a lot of and actually I'm not sure if you saw it. The Pentagon yesterday released some footage from the Navy
Oh, really? New
of
footage?
yeah, of them seeing a UFO. I mean, that's the weird thing right now, that they're very open about it. It's like they're slowly making people accept that there are UFOs. Why are they slowly releasing these videos and these data? Because the Pentagon, I think, recently released some information about UFOs. I have to verify
Yeah.
this, but yeah.
No. Yeah, you're right. I've been reading a little bit about this as well, and I think that I don't know the exact details, but they are basically they forced to release unclassified reports for the certain amount of decades of anything UFO or extraterrestrial related to that. And on top of that, I don't know if you heard on there's a channel on YouTube. I have to get the name again, but they're calling the videos like Citizens Hearing something UFO, and I think once a week, every week now, they have people getting together on this board and just discussing like experts. Like I'm talking to like bigwig experts, people that held positions, like a former defense minister in Canada, Paul Hillier, and then there's people up there with PhDs and like very very like um, recognizable figures that hold very professional careers, and they're going up there and saying these well, in my opinion, like very very eye-opening stuff, and presenting all this data, and just trying to well, I haven't seen them all yet, so I can't really, each one's about 90 minutes long or so, but it's very interesting. If you have a chance, maybe I can send you the playlist. And
Yeah. Okay. We took up so much of your time.
oh, it's my
Thank
pleasure.
you.
I had a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing it with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Hey, I've learned a lot from you guys today, and I was here telling my stories, but I ended up learning a lot from you guys too, and it's eye opening. And I think the reason behind that is the first time I have openly spoken with anybody who has any kind of level of knowledge in this field. So it's kind of both exciting and eye opening, but mysterious at the same time.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very
so
much.
much. Yeah, thank you for taking the time.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, take care, everybody.
Thanks, Rex, for adjusting to our requested time and also for sharing your unique experiences with us. I guess until we get to see that same shadow creature he encountered, we will never know what kind of entity that was. As most of you know, I have this obsession of classifying the different entities that inhabit the invisible world, and the behavior of this shadow creature doesn't seem to connect with any of the entities we've heard before. Have you encountered a shadow creature that moves the same way as Rex described? If you'd care to share it with us, email it to us at paranormalsph@gmail.com. Maybe we can try to understand what this entity was. If you want to continue the discussion, head over to our Discord server, link down below. You can share your shadow creature experiences there, and let's try to overanalyze it. October 30 is fast approaching. Are you ready to join us in our live episode? We have a few giveaways. Bisita naman kayo. So I hope you listen up on some old episodes kasi yung trivia namin will be based on some stories from way back. So parang just to check if talaga bang alam niyo yung mga kwento namin. But again, please join us. Shout out to Kalpot TV and Ivan Reyes, yung mga masipag mag-present sa YouTube. So hello, sana kung nakikinig kayo, alam namin nandiyan kayo. Thank you sa panonood at sa pagko-comment. The Paranormal Podcast is engineered and produced by F90 Productions. If you have the time, please again rate and review our show on whatever podcast platform you follow. Thank you everyone for listening. We appreciate the time you set aside to listening to the podcast. Thank you and stay safe.